Welcome back to Questions of Life. This is the next part of our video with Paulette and with Velma exploring racism.
You're living with constant suspicion. You feel people suspicious of you. Mm-hmm. You're living with constant, am I going to be discriminated, rejected? Sort of all the time. How do you, how do you live with that level of fear? Is it fear? Is that the word you would describe it? How would you describe it?
I wouldn't call it fear, not at all. Like I said, you have to adjust. I think one of the things that helped me, I was talking to Velma about this, is that I've had to go through therapy in order for me to adjust to some of the things that I hear. So when I see, for example, my children who live across the way from the school, we literally live from where I am to where Cath is, to where the school gate is. And you see how people can be quite rude to us. And children will come into our home for a party, but, certain children will say, you can't come to my house because of, and my daughter's had that, because you're brown. We just have learned through the love of God. So even recently, we had a neighbor. We've had 2 doors from us, a neighbor that's moved in, and she started to have trouble with our next door neighbors. And she decided that she would say to our next door neighbor, if you guys carry on, then we are going to rent our house to Packies. And this is what just happened about a couple of months ago. So we are constantly having to hear stuff. My daughter at school, people are touching her hair, look at her hair and it's different, and what's going on with your hair, constantly. What you have to do, I believe, is put in some therapy, but mainly it's because of the love of God that we put into our lives to help us to cope. So I think sometimes when you see some black people, and I was taught this terminology recently about microaggression, that sometimes it's like having a mosquito bite and you have one, and then you have another, and you have another, and before you know it, you become very ill because of all of this constant battling with the stuff that's going on. But in order for you not to be aggressive or to be mentally insane sometimes with stuff, it is putting in place what my mom said is forgive them for they know not what they do, and putting in the love of Jesus into it. Because if it was not for Christ in my life, I can say categorically I would hate every white person on the planet because of so much. Because when you've lived a life as long as I have, and you've been part of it over and over and over again, it takes the love of God and the courage that God gives you to be able to say 70 times 7 times a day, I can forgive and I can get over this. But it has taken me time and time again in therapy. And I know that my children are affected by the racism. I know that things are happening in our home because of the anger of some of the things that happen to us. And we keep on pushing in about love and about the love of God, and that, we have to see beyond the faults and see the need. And this is one of the reasons why we can do this talk, Velma and I, get today, because we want to help people to understand that there is a challenge for us. It is real for us, but we are trying to open up people's eyes to see that we're not all bad people, people of color, and we have real life experiences which cause us to be hurt. But what is it that you then can do for us or for yourself to make certain that life becomes easier for black people, for people of color, for even for yourselves, the way that we would talk with you and support you and you support us?
I think that analogy of if you're constantly bitten, then it has a cumulative effect. I had a very profound experience for me that it sounds incredibly trivial in your context, but it helps me understand what you mean. My name's Donald Campbell. It's a Scottish name. I have Scottish parents. When I was a student, I was placed at a student placement in a fairly rough estate in Edinburgh, a very rough estate with a Baptist church. And I went to a house, and everybody was Scottish, and everybody was quite rough. And I was introduced, this is Donald, and I felt a great warmth and whatever, and it was a thing. And then they said, after about 10 minutes, would I say a few words? And I opened my mouth, and I spoke with an English accent. And I couldn't prove to anybody else what that felt like, but I felt that room change. And I felt scared. And I was the same colour, and my family was from the same area. But because I had a different accent, I was perceived as English. And it's difficult to explain in that moment, so I fully understand that you're living with what I experienced for half an hour, which made me deeply uncomfortable, and I've never forgotten. You experienced that on so many occasions. And I'm in admiration for your faith. Admiration. I think it's incredible that what you've just shared, that concept that they know not what they do. Velma, how do you cope with it?
Well, I guess part of it is, as I also say, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Because, I guess I've come to the conclusion that, well, all white people are not like that. I got loads of, white friends, and, I've lived among white people, I could say, all my life. Even living in Liberia, we had white friends who came to the country. My godmother, one of my godmother, the family were friends with my parents. So in Liberia, my godmother was a German woman. We had a German family. And because of the job my father did in Liberia, we always had visitors in white and black and blue, whatever color. So I've always lived with white people. And so it was kind of strange to experience, almost racism here. But then I guess the people here are predominantly white, whereas where I come from in Liberia, everybody there is predominantly black. The thing that helps me is when I became a Christian, that's why when I describe myself first, that I was born and I was named Velma. And when I became a Christian, that was the next big thing that happened to me. Okay, so I became a Christian. Even before I got married, even before I finished university, I became a Christian. And when God changed my heart, He did. He changed my heart. And so that was the first thing that I've noticed when I became a Christian. It's almost like people took on a different look. The way I saw people was different. And so that even when people did, wrong to me and treated me in a bad way, at first, if the situation happened, I probably would dismiss it, and then if it happened again, or if I think about it 2 or 3 times, if I went home and it came back into my mind, or for example with my children, 2 or 3 times, and then I will go straight to God with that. And I say, Father, this thing is bugging me. Please help me, tell me what to do, because I don't want it to mess up with my head. Please tell me what to do. And oftentimes, when I pray over things like that, God will come back to me, and Jesus will, I will just remember, yes, Jesus forgave them, they know not what to do. And sometimes, God tells me, you show love to that person. And I know it depends on how bad it is, okay? But even with the bad things, he will still say, find a way. And I have discovered in my experience as a Christian that when I ask God to help me to show love, to come back with love, it makes such a difference to me. And sometimes, even the person who has done the evil to me, now the people who did the bad things to my children, most of them I don't know, but there are people who did racist things to me on my road and other places I've come across here in my experience in Sutton, but particularly the people who live next to me, I deliberately showed them love. And I'm telling you, it worked magic. I'm telling you,
what do you mean
magic.
It worked magic?
It worked, because the attitude changed. Right. The attitude changed. The people who lived next door to us, I remember when we first moved there, I invited them to come round. In fact, the first thing that happened was they put the house on sale about a month after we moved. Well, nobody bought the house. It was up for sale for about 6 months. And then the funny thing was, the Pakistani, no, I think he's Pakistani, or anyway, he's Asian, who lived in the flats with us at Good Hospital. They came to see the house, and they chose not to buy it. So after about 6 months or so, nobody else came to look at the house. So they finally took the house off the market. So when they took the house off the market, well, I invited them over for Sunday, for Sunday lunch, where the couple came. And then when they were leaving, the woman said to me, she said, well, don't expect us to invite you to our house, even though you've invited us. So I said, oh, no, don't worry about that. That wasn't the reason I invited you. I just invited you because you're my neighbor, and I wanted to find out a little bit about you. So don't worry, I wasn't expecting that at all. So I found out coming back with love, there's something in the Bible that says it's like putting hot coals on your enemy's head when you show them love. And so the way I handle it, like I say, is I pray and I just ask God for the grace. I just ask God for the grace. And it's not easy. It is hard. But I keep doing it. And when it comes back to me, I ask God again for the grace to forgive and to let it go.
You're remarkable. Fantastic. Cath, you've got a question from people.
I just think it is incredible. To be hurt and damaged by people once and to forgive is huge. But this is something that you're living with day in, day out. This isn't something that happened years ago in the past and you've been working it through. It's a constant forgiveness. And the fact that in both of you there is no bitterness, both of you there is no, I'm going to get my own back or my revenge, I just think is incredible. It's an incredible testimony to the power of God, but also to your willingness to do the right thing and to be godly people in the midst of a situation where you could so easily say, do you know what, stuff it. I've been treated unfairly, right, what can I do to get my own back? But you are sowing love and positivity and want to bring about change. And I think that's incredible. I honestly do. So all power to you girls, because you're absolutely amazing.
Can I just say one thing? I remember years ago when I didn't know, it must have been a few years after we moved to this house, the then pastor of this church was Alan Payne, and Alan came to our house. I don't know whether I asked him to come or how he got there, but anyway, this afternoon we were talking, and I was just sharing with him that Arp was having difficulty, I said, Alan, he's becoming aggressive, he's not doing what he's supposed to do, and it's concerning to us, and that's not the way he was brought up. And then Alan looked at me, and he said, Velma, is Arp being bullied at school or treated in an unfair way? I said, what do you mean? And then he said to me, before you came here, he said there was another family in our church, and their son, they had a similar struggle. He said, and they had to leave the area because their son was being, they had all these racial problems at school. And so they had to move away from here. He said, ask Ab, check on him. So that day Ab came from school. I said, come here. Tell me what's happening with you. And then he began to tell me a few things, some of the things that he was experiencing and that he had been experiencing even from primary school. This was secondary school. And he'd just gone into secondary school. So Alan was the first person who alerted me to it. I didn't even realize. Like I said, I wasn't used to, it was sort of a strange phenomenon. I didn't think they were being done to our children. So then I found out, and then we started to keep, eye on it. There were a few times I had to go to the school to tell the school, to speak to the headmaster, and I said, we're planning to go back to our country. I said, please, I want you to give our children extra work because we're going back home and they're going to demand more of them. And there was a point in time where I had to talk when he was in A levels. I had to have a meeting with the head of sixth form and the headmaster of the school. And I was really upset that day. And I said, look, I don't expect you to treat my son this way. And I know children misbehave, but I expect you to encourage him and not to tell him that he's not going to amount to anything. I say, I am not going to have that. I was so upset that day. When we came from the meeting, I said, Mommy, I never expected you. He said, Mommy, I never expected you to talk so hard. I said, I didn't expect that myself. I don't even know where it came from.
And that's the sad thing is because even my children have said, Mom, I don't even tell you some things because we know that what you're going to do. So they're afraid of us even confronting people. So this last couple of weeks, my daughter said to me, Mom, there was a group set up at school online which called themselves People Against Black Coons and Other Things. And I was like, what, Saffron? And she just said, Mom, you would not believe the stuff that they're putting in this group. Fortunately, some parent found out, got the police involved, and they've been expelled. But that was 2 weeks ago that happened. But when she told me about it, and she's like, Mom, please don't go to school. Don't, because if they know that I've reported it, I'm going to get it. And this is what we constantly are having to battle with.
That follows on. I've got a question here from Steve. He's texted in, and it's for you, Paulette. Steve's actually here in the church live with us this evening. He says, good evening. As mentioned, your husband is Indian. Do you find he experiences different ways of racism from yourself? Also, with your children having two mixed-race parents, do they find reactions worse?
I think, does Corky or Kulvinder, I call him Corky.
I like that. That's great.
My husband is named after Corky the cat, a cartoony character from a magazine because he used to drink a lot of milk. And it stuck with him.
It's brilliant.
So Corky the cat, does he face racism differently from... I think, he gets his stuff. He's in the NHS and he has... he's a manager in the NHS, and him and a number of managers have talked about how on that side of the NHS, if you're not a doctor and so on the other side of the NHS, how much of a struggle it is to get beyond a certain point. And they constantly talk about that, of people of colour, whether Asian or black or any other kind of colour. They said there is a big thing, and they actually have a program within the part of the NHS that he's in, which talks about the challenges that you will have as a black person or as a person of colour within that environment. There's an actual proper program for managers, and they constantly have that problem. Do my children have problems with the fact that we are both of different kind of nationalities together. Yes, they do have problems, but we do have problems even ourselves. We have black people or people from Afro-Caribbean or African kind of backgrounds who are anti-me because of what I've done. And there's Asian people, and the Asian people don't like black people generally. And so when we got married and moved to Handsworth, I remember walking out of our house at the time, and somebody spat in front of us because it was, you guys dared to get married. And there's a whole bunch of stories of people who, on both sets of sides, constant battling with that. So we've had battles, our children will have battles. So yeah, it's like, how dare we have married for love?